It's Tuesday, the 18th of August, and this is a Tilt webinar with Mark Connolly, keeping connected in complicated times, using audio tools to support remote and hybrid language learning. Hello, my name is Helen Myers. I'm chair of the London branch of the Association for Language Learning. We always at this point also thank Heike Philp and Linguoscope, who've supported us in putting together webinars and finding out how to use the tech. Always we thank, right at the beginning of a webinar, Joe Dale, who is the person who's brought together all of these people to speak to us. So Joe, would you like to give us a few words and tell us about any of your availability to help us?
I would love to, Helen. Thanks ever so much. Yeah, so we worked out this is officially our 50th Tilt webinar since March. So it's very, very exciting. And I'm very excited personally to, for the first time ever, virtually meet Mark, who I've been connected with for a number of different years, probably about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years, I think. And yeah, it's just lovely that we're having a presentation from Mark today on audio tools, which I'm a big fan of as well. So yeah, so I'm an independent languages consultant, the head scout for the Tilt webinars. And it's been lovely that we've been having people from literally all over the world. And it's lovely, the attendees are literally from all over the world as well. It's just so exciting. It's absolutely wonderful. But as a day job, I have to make a living as well. And I am making a living through paid webinars, but in the chat, I've written I put a link for a Google Doc, which has 18 example sessions. If you would like any support around hybrid sessions or remote sessions or any sort of use of technology in the context that you're in, please do get in touch. Please do share that document with anyone you would like, far and wide, and I'd be delighted to help and support you. So just get in contact with me if you're interested. Anyway, let's crack on with the webinar.
Okay, and I can certainly endorse the fact that Joe is fantastic. He's given loads of support to us in this country, and we've started now calling him, yes, he's our national treasure, but we are happy to share him with the world. So here we are. I would like to do a little bit of a plug for the Association for Language Learning. Those of you who are in an association, whether it's the Association for Language Learning in the UK or in another country, perhaps now write in the chat that you are members and encourage people to join their members in whichever country you are. We feel it's really important that you have this as a body for not only being able to bring people together, but being able to talk on behalf of language teachers. So please do join. And if you join tonight or up until the 30th of September, you get a 10% discount. I've just thought I've renewed my membership today and I didn't use the discount code, but anyway.
There we are.
Just thought of that. Anyway, no, but you can get a discount if you join now. And it's been lovely. We've had lots of people who've joined, almost they've said as a thank you to the fact that it's run by volunteers. We have a very small group of staff who are there to just keep things running, but really the actual events, the activities are run by people doing it really for nothing. So please do join in. Just to tell you that this recording is going to be available afterwards for anybody. Joe keeps it on his Joe Dale 100 channel, and I keep a record of it all on the London branch webinar page. We've got events coming up as well. So although it's the summer holidays, we're still going. We've got a really exciting event coming up. Oh, I don't think I've put the date here. This is going to be on Thursday. I do apologise. On Thursday, I've spoken to Marie and Natasha this morning. They have already put together an amazing presentation, a really interesting presentation about escape rooms, which I know everybody's got really excited about. So do come along to that. It's particularly good because they are in a prep school, so they're working with younger children. A lot of our sessions have been to do with older children. This is the younger one, so that'd be a great one for you to come to this Thursday. Next Tuesday, ALL is doing a webinar for NQTs, newly qualified teachers, where someone who's very experienced in being with NQTs will be talking, and a whole group of people will be talking about how to start off your teaching. And then we've just announced this Saturday, so that's actually before the Tuesday, Saturday, Priscilla, this is Joe's friend in, where is she from?
She's from Brazil, so I've known Priscilla for a number of years. We met at the IATEFL event, which is where I met Raquel Ribeiro as well, who was who did a webinar for us a couple of weeks ago on mobile learning. And Priscilla is an expert in special educational needs. So I thought it would be a really good idea for her to share some ideas and some strategies based around special educational needs. So she teaches English in Brazil, but I've seen her presentation and it's great. And we're going to focus on sort of universal strategies and how she's been using Minecraft as well, which I think is particularly exciting for languages. So yeah, I know it's a Saturday, but it's if you're available, I would really encourage you to come along. But we're going to record it as well as normal, and it'll be on my YouTube channel. And then on the 29th of August, we have, again on a Saturday, we have the lovely and amazing Isabel Jones, who's going to be doing a session which will be complementing the content that Paco Fernandez did for us back in April, I think that was, around using music and language learning. And for many years, Isabel has been interested in how music can be used in the languages classroom. So again, another must-see session. And I think that's it for August, although I'll be doing some other commercial webinars, which I'll be promoting on Twitter and elsewhere as well.
And actually, that's a nice, we were saying we normally try and avoid Saturdays, although it's very good. Early Saturday is good for our Australian presenters, isn't it? I know. So, but actually music on a Saturday night, that would be good to do. Someone's just asked me about the discount code. There it is, webinar 10. Okay. We always remind people about our etiquette, whether you're on Zoom or the live stream. In summary, we're professional and kind. We're always nice. Nobody ever has a rant. There are quite a few reasons at the moment to have a rant, I must say, in this country, but we're not going to think about it tonight. And then we always have to do a disclaimer to say that AW London is very happy to host speakers and participants free of charge. Speakers and participants are responsible for what they say. So over to Joe, who's already given a bit of an introduction, but it'd be lovely to hear more about Mark. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Helen. So yeah, so I'm not sure exactly when Mark and I connected on Twitter, but certainly his Twitter handle has been coming up on my timeline over many, many years. And it's as I said, it's a genuine pleasure that he's joining us this evening. First time we virtually met, which always makes a big difference, I think. It's obviously nice to meet people face to face as well, but to virtually meet them face to face is also very exciting as well. And I know Mark is a big fan of audio tools. He recorded some audio around how you could insert audio into Google Slides presentation, which I know I still have got and haven't used yet, but I'm planning on using it very soon for the MFL Twitterati podcast. And that was really fantastic. He gave lots of ideas around how you could use the insert audio into Google Slides around in the languages classroom. So this is going to be great. We're going to have a selection of presentation and some live demonstration in today's session. What's been really nice as well, the way that there's the focus on audio tools as opposed to all the other things that we've been doing. And so those people who are fans of audio for promoting listening and speaking skills in languages, I think this should give us lots and lots of ideas we can get our teeth into. So you're very, very welcome, Mark. Over to you. If you'd like to share your presentation and we'll get going. Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Oh.
One thing I forgot to say, because I think, Joe, you prefer, and people haven't got their videos on, but normally I think, Joe, you suggest that people don't have their videos on during the webinar just because that could use up bandwidth. So
that's right. And I'm going to turn my video off as well. I'll have my audio on the whole time, but I'll turn my video off as well for the same reason.
Okay.
But you can keep yours on, Mark. That's absolutely fine. And here we go.
Okay, well, thank you for that intro. I'm going to talk about a number of different workflows. I'm going to start with that Google Slides, the insert audio, which I was pining for a number of years, and then it kind of had a soft release that was a little bit wonky, but now it's ready for prime time. So I'm going to talk about ways to use and share audio, ways to use audio as a way to collaborate with students, both in synchronous and asynchronous situations. And I'll kind of describe how that worked in a sort of an emergency situation. I'll talk about who I am and how our school has adapted, but really the lessons that we learned from that experience from March to June of last year, and how going into so I'm a high school teacher, right? So grades 9 through 12 in the US, students age 14 to 18 roughly. So our school is a K-12 school. And the decision for the upper school, which is grades 9 through 12, has been that we will be remote. So in some ways, it's a continuation of the same situation. So lessons learned and lessons applied, but with a little more time to prep. So I've titled this talk, Keeping Connected in Complicated Times Using Audio Tools, right, in remote and hybrid situations, and we will in fact be remote again. So this is maybe, I wanted to start with this. This is what it looked like. This is what school used to look like for us, right? So I've always used a ton of tech. I started and I'm trained as a language teacher, but have always had a hand and an interest and something of a talent, at least enough to be dangerous, in the technology field. And as it became easier to do that with the tools that we have on our desktop, and as the opportunity to work in my school as an instructional technologist came on board, I now am working sort of half of my time in the classroom and half of my time, frankly, more than half of my time these days, in teacher support and student support. So before March 2020, this is what life looked like, right? I was in the classroom like all of us with students using high-tech and low-tech solutions, but the necessity to use technology, specifically audio in this case, wasn't as urgent. It was available, but it wasn't as urgent because we could walk around the class, we could have debates, we could present skits, we could speak spontaneously, or we could speak in a prepared manner, but that's what was happening. This is what life has looked like since March. So a lot of sitting at my desk, a lot of, I'll talk about both software and hardware, but this is a snowball microphone, a lot of thinking around, given the limited time that we have, and our school had really just 45-minute block per week. So really my goal then and now was to collaborate beyond that 45-minute block. I needed time, not for instruction time, I needed time, and I needed to create time for my students to listen to each other and to speak with each other. So that was my primary challenge, right? To create chances for students to speak and listen to each other whenever and wherever that was going to happen. Primarily what I'm going to talk about, although Joe and I will do a little bit of a synchronous demo, almost all of what I'm describing today is kind of done in an asynchronous manner. And what I mean by that is, while we do have Zooms to connect and to move instruction and practice along, a lot of the work that we're doing in terms of writing, recording, and then post-production is happening in an asynchronous way. And I'll show you some screenshots and we'll do a little bit of demos. This last bit was equally important to me. I wanted to create something where the process and the product were shared. Right, so what I mean by that is it's collaborative in an asynchronous way, but we can actually, at the end of the day, share something. In this case, an audio file. I'll do a little bit of a teaser as part of a video file too, but that was equally important, right? I wanted a deliverable. I wanted students not just to work with the 2 or 3 that they were working with in their group, but I wanted the whole class to experience this together. So what does that actually mean? In terms of the final product, it's everything from pronunciation practice, simple recording, right, of words, of sounds, of syllables, of tongue twisters, of verses of poetry, things like that. It could be reflection, spontaneous or prepared. It could be an individual class portfolio where over time students are recording and you hope to see improvement in intonation and pronunciation. Podcasts, interviews, audiobook chapters, and an interactive art gallery. And I've bolded those 4, I guess they're 4, because those are the ones that we're gonna demo a little bit. In terms of tools, this is just a little bit of a disclaimer, but also I hope, an endorsement and a reminder that this doesn't, everything I'm talking about here does not require high-priced hardware. In fact, all of it is web-based, right? We happen to be a PC school, we're a G Suite school. I am using, on occasion, an external Blue Snowball mic, but I've gotten great mileage out of earbuds or computer audio as well. People are always interested in the tools, the software. Like I said, we're a G Suite school. We use Schoology, which is our LMS. I know a lot of folks elsewhere are using Google Classroom, and our students in grade 6, 7, and 8 use Classroom, including my son. So I'm familiar with how that works, and it obviously integrates very well with G Suite. 1, 2, 3 apps is something that came my way. It's It's a free web-based application super powerhouse. I've used it specifically for audio recording, but if you want to snip audio, if you want to create video, if you want to do all kinds of different things, I would really encourage you to look at that. Again, one of the things that I'll talk about is especially with the given market forces, students that are using iPhones, some of the audio files can be wonky, but we'll talk about how to make that work. This is one that I hadn't heard of until I was doing a little bit of homework and looking back on past Tilt webinars, but that's something I have my eye on. Online Convert I use with great frequency to convert an M4A to an MP3 or to a WAV file, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to do a live demo of Soundtrap. I used to use freesound.org, which is everything from ambient music to horror sound effects, to podcast intros and outros, to beats, to loops, to everything. It's now, and like I said, I've used that for a number of years. Soundtrap absorbed that. I don't know the exact nature of the agreement, but now you can search and apply free sound clips right within Soundtrap, which is pretty awesome. Many of us used to use Audacity. Audacity still has a place, but hopefully I can make a case why Soundtrap is sort of a next level product. So these are the use cases, right? So whether it's one student or more than one student, and almost all of the cases that I'll describe today are of the more than one student variety. So working together synchronously, asynchronously on a script, recording things asynchronously, right? So recording, the best example that I'll point to is I had one of my students who was in South suburban Boston, and one of my students in Turkey, right? So we're a boarding school, and they were able to work together to bring all of their audio together, including a parenthetical note that said, Senor, right, Mr. Connolly, I want my audio to interrupt my other friends, which is rude on Zoom, but kind of awesome in a transcontinental podcast. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So this is the fundamental question. I know some of this audio production can seem scary and some of it can seem overwhelming. Experience tells me that if you can answer these questions, you're well on your way to establishing a workflow and having a set of tools to making this work. So is it an individual submission, an interpretive reading, right? A pronunciation practice, a tongue twister, all kinds of things like that? Or is this a collaborative project, right? And whatever the answer there will lead you down a forking path. This is where I get a little bit, I like to nerd out with some of these tools, but the answer to this question, how much does post-production matter? That answer can be in a totally satisfactory way, not at all, right? So don't let that be a barrier to entry into some of these ideas. So this is the workflow, right? And I kind of purposely want to put this out and say, wow, that's a lot of steps and a lot of tools. Consider this a choice menu, right? If you're doing all of these steps in all of these places, you're doing something wrong, and it's going to take you weeks. But if you find the tool that works for you, right? I mentioned that we're a Schoology school. We can work from audio input to Schoology and call it a day. We could get Schoology into submissions, and I'll show you submissions in Schoology, and then work that elsewhere. And we'll kind of deconstruct this. So you're going to see this diagram a couple of different ways and a couple of different times throughout this presentation. So the sequence one, right? And I'm going to start, before we get into Soundtrap, I'm just going to talk to the Google Drive, specifically the slides audio, but this can work, right? I can go from student audio, recorded in 123 apps, recorded on a phone, recorded on a tablet, recorded wherever, into Google Drive, and then insert audio and have a clip that is playable.
Al principio, la fe movía montañas solo cuando era absolutamente necesario.
That's a clip that I'm going to return to. But if you've never seen that here, I'll kind of go out of presentation mode. You can, right within slides, you can insert audio. And this is where file formatting begins to matter a little bit. what Google Slides wants, even though you can store any audio format inside of Drive, what Slides seem to want is an MP3 or WAV file and not an M4A. So I found myself this spring and other times during the year doing some batch file conversion from N4A to WAV or to MP3 if we're interested in using it inside of Slides. That's not as much of an issue in Soundtrap, and we'll talk about why. But you could imagine this workflow here. I was looking back or listening back on some previous webinars, and the notion of submitting audio through a Google form is pretty neat, right? So if you had, if you were not interested in collaboration, if you were interested in organization of having, when did this student submit, how many times, what is it? What's the link to that? That would work perfectly well. So too in Slides. And in fact, this is a little bit of meta because I've used the insert audio function inside of Slides here as part of this, and I'll return that. So that really is the simplest way that we begin to work with audio. But that's not to suggest that it's not fun or it's not interesting or it's not relevant, right? So this can work, right, into forms or into Slides. I have a system, right? So one of the questions become, all right, so how are students submitting it? They can email it, which is not ideal. They can submit it through an LMS, through Google Classroom, in our case through Schoology or through Haiku or Canvas or whatever other learning management system you're using. You can also set up a shared folder, which I do with my students, right? One of the first tech tasks of any school year is I set up a folder that's shared between just the student and I. We have equal privileges, and I use this as a portfolio, right? So this is something that at the beginning of the year mostly has written work, but as we work through the year, part of the way I judge success during a year is how much is here and in what different media, right? So if this is all writing, I'm missing the mark, right? But if there's audio here and video here, and this audio not only becomes part of singular student practice and I'm giving them feedback, but in this case, this became part of an audio book, then I think we're hitting the mark. So this is a little bit of the student-teacher workflow. And here's what this looks like, right? I have to thank Greg Kuliwick, who he works for EdTech Teacher. He churns out amazing content, and he just kind of put this up the other day. So if you are interested in setting up a super simple podcast, right? Episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, all this is, right, is a series of recordings set up the way that I just described. So students record on their device, right, or on with or without their a mic, and then submit that. And this becomes, right, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. So these could be 3 or 4 different students, right? News, weather, sports. It could be the same student taking 3, 4, 5 different perspectives. It could be sort of counterpoint on an issue. And what you really have there is, and you could play with the interface. I've seen Bitmoji classrooms are exploding, but there's also the sort of Netflix template. You could imagine a sort of NPR or BBC type template where the audio that students create kind of slots into something that's approaching a professional type setup. So like I said, that can be storytelling, it could be tongue twisters, it can be lots of other things. So here's an example, right? And this is sort of our first semi-participatory moment. I took the story La Fe y las Montañas by Augusto Monterroso, right? If you're familiar with his work, it's amazing because it's amazing, and it's amazing because they're very, very short. In this case, it's like a 5-line story. So for bell ringers, for simple reading comprehension, or in this case, for a stripped down audiobook sample, his work is tailor-made. So what I did here was record.
Cuando en la carretera se produce un derrumbe bajo el cual mueren varios viajeros, es que alguien, muy lejano o inmediato, tuvo un ligerísimo atisbo de fe. Al principio, la fe movía montañas solo cuando era absolutamente necesario.
So I'll spare you the full audio, but if you're a Spanish speaker or a Spanish teacher, you'll understand that, okay, that's fine, but they seem to actually be out of order, and they're purposefully out of order. So I record, you've heard the notion of sort of fractured fairy tales, of songs that are, or narratives that are out of order. And now this becomes a listening comprehension activity. If I'm the one who's recording this, right, it's just a listening comprehension activity. A next level application would be for me sort of double blind to say, no, you don't need to know what we're doing, tomorrow with this, but part of your homework is to read and rehearse and record this audio and submit it to me. And then I would kind of work the workflow that I described before and set them up. And what we could do is walk into class and say, okay, what's wrong with this story and why? All right, so read or the clips. This would be the prompt that I might share with my students. So it becomes not only a speaking and a listening comprehension activity, but it actually becomes a conversation about how narrative works, right? So that's one way that I can imagine using this. I could have just as easily set this up in order and said, all right, let's work through these in a episodic type way. But the notion of a fractured narrative or a fractured fairy tale kind of interested me there. Same idea here, right? And we could deconstruct it. Again, this is audio, right? I'll get out of presenter mode here. I can imagine this a couple of different ways, right? So I could share this to students and say, all right, let's use this as a canvas. Let's use this as a set of talking points. But the beauty of slides is that I could duplicate this and I could say to every student, all right, you have your slide and here's the link to your slide. I want you to construct and then perhaps deconstruct again this narrative. So all of the exclamatory sentences, all of the interrogative sentences, all of the sentences with, or the sections, right? If you broke it down by sentence or by section, all of the sections with subjunctives, all of the sections with a certain level of vocabulary. So you could imagine, and I'm imagining using this as a sort of canvas that I can take these and move them around. So if there was something that said, all right, well, physically take these audio clips and move them over here to the, I can imagine sort of some sort of a matrix that says indicative, subjunctive, past, present, exclamatory, interrogative, and you can begin to work with audio differently there. So that's one way that I've imagined it. This is the way it really all came together for me and for my students this spring. We're doing a unit on Mexican muralism, right? So art with a social conscience, and this, which is it was a Google Arts and Culture featured setup, really invited me to say, okay, what if we took images and what if we imagined audio as clickable sort of interactive buttons? And what if we class sourced basically an interactive gallery? So this is what I gave them as an example. And I used my voice in each of these situations to say, all right, I want you to do this, but do it one step better. And that gets us to this project, which I called Aparte, right? A play on arte and aparte, because we were all apart. And students selected different artists. And what they did was based on these elements that I gave them, right? So mirada, right? Where's the gaze, the tono, the tone, estilo, the style, the composición. And we talked a little bit about how to comment and how to critique an artwork. And then what the students did was they submitted the audios to me. I kind of dropped them in, and now...
La mujer y su bebé están en el primer plano, la carretera está en el segundo plano, y un paisaje de montañas y cielo está en el fondo del...
So there, the student is talking about composition. Here, about...
Mientras Siqueiros típicamente era un muralista que usaba elementos surrealistas y detallados, estudió el arte tradicional de Europa y del Renacimiento también.
So that, right, becomes, in all of these different cases, a gallery where students are submitting, again, based on a matrix kind of that I gave them, to submitting something that became a virtual gallery. And to my point before, this was important to me because I wanted students to work on the skills of critiquing art. I wanted them to do some sophisticated writing. I wanted them to practice their pronunciation. And I wanted this to be something that in the end, I could pull together using Google Slides to create this virtual gallery. And I was super excited about how this came together. And this is something, right, one of the things I hope I can leave you with is all of these tools, while they build bridges and sustain connections in a remote or a hybrid situation, these are all tools that we can equally use if and when we return to, back to my pictures at the start of the presentation, when we return to something approaching normalcy, right, as a way for students to collaborate, to share, to communicate with each other. So what are applications? Like I said, it could be a guided audio tour of artwork, right? When I say vertical, I mean what I just demonstrated. So it's students looking deeply at different elements of one work of art. It could equally be horizontal. And what I mean by horizontal is you're going to take this element. You're going to be the expert in style. You're going to be the expert in composition. You're going to be the expert in tone. And you're going to see that across multiple artists or multiple artwork. So it would work for geography, right? Anything that you can envision, you can drop an audio on top of. So regions of Spain, different accents in Spain, different elements of pre-Columbian Central America history, right? You can imagine a timeline that's clickable. And this is sort of independent of level. Certainly the example that I just gave you are upper level students, what we would call level 4. So students with 3 full years, if not more, prior. But this could be, what are the rooms of the house and what do you do there? This could be, describe your neighborhood, describe your family inside. So again, anything that you can pull in to Google Slides, you can narrate over. So that's the first part. Maybe I'll pause here and say, are there questions about that before we move into the Soundtrap idea, which in some ways will replicate some of the same workflows, but also will be a little more interactive. But are there questions, or there ideas, or are there things I can talk more about?
Okay, so I'm absolutely loving this so far, Mark. It's absolutely fantastic. A lot of people have talked about, well, as feedback really, just saying, yeah, great idea, see how we can apply this to our own context. One question that I've got 2 questions. One is, can you maybe explain how you can change the color of the loudspeaker icon when you insert it into Google Slides?
100%, yep. So these are all the audios, and it's as simple as if I go up here to format options, I'm gonna have to move my Zoom window, but it's recolor.
Fantastic.
And
that's excellent.
it has themes, for whatever reason, actually reasons that I like. It's sort of a pastel-y theme, but it's a way to differentiate. If you're going to do this a lot, you could kind of train students and train yourself to say, I don't know, this color is declaratory sentences, and this color is subjunctives, and this color is past tense, and this color, or you could, like I said, once you have these in, you can use it as an interactive garden, right? So I could prepare something and have them all be gray, right? And say, all right, group 1, group 2, group 3, and then take this slide, say, and all I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna go up here, I'll go over to this one here, and I'll just duplicate the slide. So group 1 and now group 2, I want you on your slide to take all of the gray, sad sentences, or all of the gray, sad sections, and color code them based on something. So you can play with this almost infinitely.
That's amazing. That's
not only in terms of where they land on the canvas, but how you scale them, right? How you know, these are scalable. So it could be, This one's really important, right? So if you've got 4 or 5 sections, sentences, parts of a narrative, I want you to do what I just did, which is scale it based on what you think is the relative importance, the relative significance to the narrative.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Have you ever tried playing around with the replace image option? I don't know if you knew that. So if you right click, could you right click that loudspeaker icon now?
Yep.
Can you see that it says replace image?
Yep.
So what you can do is if you, I don't know if you have something to hand, but if you uploaded an image, what it would do is it would, or search the web maybe,
Yep.
you can replace the loudspeaker icon with an image. So in other words, instead of having the artwork with the audio, audios on top of the artwork, the actual artwork itself could be the trigger to play the audio. If that makes sense. If you,
that makes, I'm just trying to move my Zoom window. So I'm going to go replace. There we go.
there you go.
That's awesome.
So that means now
taught me something here.
that means now you can then click on that image and it will then play the audio. So I've seen, for example, in Bitmoji classrooms, what people have done is they've used the Bitmoji as the character within the classroom as a type of treasure hunt. So in other words, you click on the Bitmoji character who then tells the story of where the clue is.
Wow.
And have to work out from some visual cue on the page what the answer is, but the Bitmoji audio is in Spanish or in French or what have you. So in other words, they have to decipher what the clue is by listening to the target language and then work out where the answer is in the image. So that's quite a nice little way of taking it to another level, of being able to right click the loudspeaker icon and replacing it with any image that you want, which could be a useful vehicle as well, I think, for listening comprehension.
That's a great idea. Especially one of the things I think we're all educators, not just language educators, all educators are aware of is if we found a measure of success this spring, and many of us did, and I'm proud of that. But if we did, it was based on pre-existing relationships, right? All of these students that from workflows that I'm describing to projects to trust that I'm asking them to have in me and each other benefited from 6, 7, 8 months prior, where now we're trying to use these same very tools, not just to move language instruction along, but to build and sustain relationships. I can see something like that, a clickable me, a clickable classroom as a way to work that in. So learn something here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
So the sort of next part of the program here is the Soundtrap portion. Soundtrap is a freemium, right? And I actually have I have a pro account, but like everything else, it's a freemium up to a certain point based mainly on storage and on access to audios. There are literally thousands of beats, of loops, of sound effects. I mentioned before the kind of mutual relationship it has with freesound.org. But if you're looking for more storage or more clips, then you reach a paywall. But this is basically a way to do some really sharp pre and post production, and we'll see if we can demo some of that live, but you'll recognize this image before. We're working from microphone, right? Whether that's internal, external, earbuds, phone, those files are working their way into Drive, and then from Drive, we're pulling them into Soundtrap. This is a little more detailed view of how it works, right? So they can submit to Classroom, they can submit to Schoology, they could email it, which if need be, but I described that shared folder structure that I used before, and then we're pulling that into Soundtrap. And now everything, right? All of these projects start with a solid script, right? And this is, I think we're all conscious of what needs to be happening in these spaces, what happens live, and the premium of conversation, the premium of listening to each other and speaking to each other. And there are things that can happen synchronously and asynchronously. So this is part of a script that my Spanish 2 students were writing, right? There was a podcast script that they partly worked on asynchronously, right? So when they were ready, right, they contributed their part, right? And then their partner came in, partly synchronously, right? There were times when we went into breakout rooms in Zoom and said, all right, you two have 15 minutes, or you as a class have 15 minutes to hammer this out. And then what they were doing, I was commenting along the way. And then when they were ready to submit, they submitted into Soundtrap. And now this we'll do, like I said, we'll do a live demo in a sec, but this is what Soundtrap looks like. If you've ever used any audio or video editor, you recognize that it works in tracks, right? So this is a situation where Corazon was one of the, they often have pretty high quality, really snappy featured tracks. And it just happened that that was the featured track of that week or month. So I pulled that in as a intro. This was one student that submitted his portion of the conversation. This is another student that submitted his portion of the conversation. And what I was able to do was to splice those together with the intro and with the outro to make a full interview podcast. One thing sort of, I wish someone had told me along the way, when you're dealing with submissions, I found that the instinct of students was to submit file 1, file 2, file 3, file 4, and so on. But it became kind of a headache for me to name those files and to move those files around. What I found worked best is you have each student submit one single audio clip with a marked pause, so that then I could come, there's a splice tool that I'll demonstrate later, and just go snip, 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 and divide those out rather than have to worry about too many clips. So that's a simple and stripped down a podcast setup as can be in these circumstances in Soundtrap. This, you'll notice, is a little different. Right? So what this was a full-blown, not interview, not conversation podcast, but a more deeper dive, right? This was in Orozco, so we were looking specifically at the Jose Clemente Orozco murals at Dartmouth College in New England here by us, and each student wrote, edited, rehearsed, and then submitted a portion, right? And we kind of, the screen snip, cut things off, but these are just sort of interstitials that move from one to the other. So you see how this can also accommodate multiple students, not just contributing one side of one dialogue, but different portions to a full podcast, right? And this ended up being about 15 minutes, which for level 4 students is not too shabby. This one was my pride and joy. This was, my son is a Spanish student and he's a 6th grader, and I was working with his teacher, and they were reading a reader, right? So a level and age appropriate, the Robo en la Noche, it's called. And what their teacher wanted them to do was practice pronunciation, right? To submit, and she marked out in the text, you're gonna do these 5 lines, and then those 5 lines, and then the next, and we'll put them together. And that's what all of these are, right? So those are the synced up contributions of students, again, independent of level. In this case, it was 6th grade. It could just as easily be 17 or 18-year-olds. Now these, you'll see Selva Amazonica, these are background tracks, right? So this is Amazon forest ambient music, and this is passing rain shower, and these are different mics, right, that I included. So one of the applications that I mentioned before was an audiobook. I'm a huge audiobook, a huge Audible fan, right? That's how my mind works. It's how my commute, or it's what my commute dictates. But this is a way for students not just to have a one-sided kind of wonky conversation that you record and call it a podcast or call it an audiobook. You can really add layers of sound, layers of kind of nuance to this, and maybe now's a good time to maybe do a little demo. So I'm gonna, let's see.
Mark, before we do that, can I just clarify the workflow? Can we just go back to the previous slide a second, if that's okay?
Sure. It's this one here.
With the soundtrack, yeah.
Yep.
So So what you're getting the students to do, they're making a script collaboratively, and then you're asking them to record their own track. My understanding is, are you asking how are you asking them to record their audio? Are you asking them to record it within Soundtrap, or using like a third-party app and then uploading it to Google Drive, and then you're doing all the editing? Is that right?
So the latter there, and one of the things that I'm excited about Soundtrap is using more of the project, using more of the kind of Google Docs capability to have them collaborate within Soundtrap. But everything in this project, right? Everything in the podcast project, everything in this more complicated audiobook project was an audio that students submitted to me. And then I pulled in and I worked the post-production magic.
Okay, so when you're asking them to record their audio, are they all recording it on, are you like recommending some apps they could use, or are they all using a web browser like the online voice recorder, or, yeah, just so I can understand it, because with the MFL Twitterati podcast, one thing that I found is you ask people to submit audio to you, which is fine. But you get a lot of issues around people maybe holding the phone too near their mouth. You're getting like lots of pops and distortion. And I just wondered, with working with students, if you found that was a challenge.
It always is, right? I hope that I'm giving my students and the impression that the language is what's most important here. It's not an AV class. It's not a sound production class. Finding a quiet room, right? Not eating your telephone and not having it in your pocket, somewhere in between is useful. I really love this 123 apps editor because it's browser based. It downloads as a WAV file, and you can pretty much bring that into wherever you choose. As I said, through this endeavor, I'm looking to play around a little bit with the hp5.org one.
So have you found in general that the quality of the audio from the students is okay, or are there occasions when you're asking the students to re-record because, for example, they're holding it right by their mouth and all you can hear is distortion?
There have been times that I've asked a student to re-record, but mostly I can make it work. In fact, one of the silly things that I included down here is you'll recognize that one of these things is not like the other. MOV is a video file, not an audio file, but I had students either knowingly or unknowingly submit video files with their phone. They were just recording their ceiling, but you could, using online convert, I was able to extract the audio from the video.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really, really interesting because certainly, as I said, through doing the podcast, I've also, people have sent me videos and I've written the audio or converted them as well. But it's just, I was just wondering with young people, if I'm sure most of them, it's fine and they can record audio in a quiet place, but it's just interesting to hear your testimonial there. That's really interesting. Thank you so much. That's great.
Yeah.
Right. Should we go on to the live Soundtrap live demonstration?
Let's do it.
I've got it open on my second screen. I know everyone in the Zoom webinars know that I do like my second screen. So I've got Soundtrap open on my second screen already. So we're good to go.
So this is, you'll see over here, the number 2. If I were to click here in Soundtrap, this is where you can search for whatever. And there's a really robust set of, by genre, by beats per minute. You can search lots of different things here. And as I said, there's, I tripped to the pay platform more for storage than for anything, but having tripped to the pay platform, it opened up a lot of other content. So that's what this is here, right? This icon here is a collaborator, right? So I added Joe yesterday. I just set this up as a template, added Joe as a collaborator and said, let's see if we can't kind of make this work in real time. So what I did was,
Bienvenidos al programa Tilt Test, una colaboración de educadores internacionales.
Vamos a ver. Let's see if doing a live demo on air is a good idea. One way to find out. Vamos.
So that's what we have up to this point, right? This is our intro. This is the stock. Right? This
Al
is the
programa
sort of
Tilt Test, una colaboración de
and
educadores
this is audio
internacionales.
that I recorded yesterday, and in this case, I did record it right into Soundtrap. What I was playing around with earlier today is I can take this is audio that I recorded outside of Soundtrap, but I can bring that in, simply drag and drop or search it, and now I've got that as part of my timeline. So I can slot that in right here. If I were interested in keeping tracks separate, I could have the tracks here, but that slots right in, and then we kind of fade out and fade to what I just added. Now we'll move on to the first section where I move a pre-recorded audio from 123 apps from my desktop into Soundtrap. So that's what that looks like. Do you want to give it a shot to, in the timeline, record something?
Yeah, how long do you want me to record for?
5 or 10 seconds.
Okay, so to do that, just to clarify for everyone watching, so I presumably I click on Add New Track, is that right?
Yep.
Or do I click on the Mic 2 option?
Either way, I think Mic 2 is now just a shell, right? But
Okay,
go ahead
so-
and do Add New Track.
Okay, let's go for Add New Track. So I click Add New Track, right? So then it says, it gives me different options. So I'm going to click on the Voice and Microphones option. Right, perfect. So it's automatically selected my nice microphone, which is just here. So that's good. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to click Start Recording. This is very exciting. I've been looking forward to this for ages. Right, here we go. So you are listening to the 50th episode of the Tilt webinar with the amazing Mark Connolly. There we are. Hopefully that worked. So
if I click out of here, and presumably if I reload the site, what I can report, right, and this is live and without a net, when I opened up the little lighter blue collaborator tab there, it showed the universal red recording icon, right, as if back to the 1980s video cassette recorders where you would have the red up here. So presumably that's going to show up in my timeline after I refreshed it here.
So when I just recorded my audio, I could then see the waveform, but it's at the beginning of the track. So
Yep.
I've just moved it to the end of the track, so it should go nicely into the music, I think. Oh, the music will finish and then it'll go into my audio. Cool. Do you need a fast computer for this to work okay, do you know?
You do-ish.
Okay.
I'm hard connected right now. I'm not on wireless,
Yeah.
but I presume that it would work nevertheless.
Fantastic. Right. So I can see it on my screen. Should it not be appearing on yours?
It should. I don't know if I have to exit out or if I have to then come back in. Do you want to do a quick screen share? So for maybe.
Yep. So if I share my screen, yeah. So that's where are we? So there we are, my second screen. There we are. So you should be able to see my screen. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep. So here, what we've got is, this is the track I've just recorded, which is here. So I've just put it here. So presumably, therefore, if I click the play head, or if I put the there, if I press play,
your playhead's out past the 45 seconds.
Oh, I see. Right. So if I go back to say here and then press play.
Are you sharing sound, Joe?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I see you dancing. But
Yeah. Sorry. I'm just too excited. Right. Let me do that again. I will do new share. Helen knows me too well. Right, here we are. Right, so share computer sound. There we are. Second screen, share. Right, let's do it again. So let's go back.
Second screen.
On my second screen. Right, here we go. Press play.
Vamos a ver. Let's see if doing a live demo on air is a good idea. One way to find out. Vamos.
You are listening to the 50th episode of the Tilt webinar with the amazing Mark Connolly. There we are. So I think we need to have that moving that way a little bit more. Let's just see.
And like I said, it's as easy as
drag and drop.
sliding those. You can move it up if you wanted to, as I had in one of those screenshots. If you had a lot of smaller clips and you didn't want to cascade those, but just put them here and then have the backing track or the intro or the outro. But once the audio is in, right, and whether that's a collaborative situation like this or not, right, if students are submitting asynchronously and then we're pulling it in, we're determining that this is a feasible workflow.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's, can you just show us how to do the fade in and fade out on the music track, please?
Yep.
So if I stop sharing, there we are. And then if you show yours. There we are. I think investing in a good microphone is really key here. And I as in for the teacher, I think for the students, it's fine if they use their phones or what have you. But right. I think so. The snowball is how many dollars is that? About $70.
This was one. If you're familiar with Richard Byrne, who does all kinds of amazing things and does literally multiple recordings a day in terms of vlog. I said, well, what do you use? And he said, use this one, which is the Blue Snowball. And this is about $100 US. Mm-hmm. And as with anything else, there are multiple ranges, but this one has served me really well. And really, as we were packing up, because we made it to our spring break for, well, barely, right? We had to break one day before what was scheduled to be our spring break. And this was one of the last things that I grabbed going out of my classroom. And thank the Lord I did.
Yeah, fantastic. There's also one called the Samson Q2U, which is a very popular one amongst podcasters, which is about £70 or something. So it's probably about $90. Which there's also in the States, there's one called the ATR 2100. Which is essentially the same microphone, but that you can't get that in the UK unless you order it from the States. But the equivalent in the UK would be the Samson Q2U, which I've just put in the chat, and that will get you similar sort of studio quality audio. That's great, yeah. Thank you.
So you asked about kind of fading in and fading out.
Yeah, if that's okay, yeah.
Yep. So each of these tracks, whether it's a Soundtrap track, or one that we recorded previously, or this one that you just recorded, there's an edit tab, and I can simply go fade in, fade out, and that gives me a little bit of a stock fade in, fade out, but then I have finer control right here to be able to say, if I really want to sync that up, or if I really want that to be a slow fade or a quick fade, I can do that. So it's really as simple as doing that. You also have some controls over here. Right, I can volume up, volume down, which is a master control over each of those tracks. Especially if you're doing an audiobook project and there are multiple layers and you have some sound effects, there's a way to mute certain tracks or mute all tracks. If you really want to say, all right, I really want to see how this one sounds and not have the example that I showed before was the Selva Amazonica, right? The Amazon jungle. If those insects are driving me crazy, then I can mute that, right? Or fade it, right? So there's, I think from a language teacher's standpoint, there's just enough functionality, right? There's just enough bells and whistles to make this work, but it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, I love it. Can you just show us how to make a simple cut, just if that's not clear to people?
Sure thing. So I mentioned that before. So say this was something that you submitted that was part of either an asynchronous dialogue that we were going to piece together, or you can imagine this being wonderful for a dramatic reading, right? To create an audio drama of a reading of whatever, right? So to submit this and that and the other with a little bit of a pause. And it's as simple as if I go to any point in that track and then cut. No.
Perfect. Yeah.
Not cut. It's
split, is it?
It's, where is it?
It's probably, do you need to select it first, then it's split region?
Yeah, I'm here and then split region. Yep.
Yeah. There you go. Lovely.
So if you, like I said, if you wanted an interstitial, or if you needed to add something there, I mentioned before the interruption. If you wanted to, across the seas, have someone interrupting someone else, it's as simple as overlapping that with the head there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Love it. Absolutely love it. I wonder what people are thinking in the chat, whether they feel this is, overwhelming, because this is the thing. I mean, like yourself, I've been into audio for years, but I haven't seen lots and lots of people, creating podcasts and all the rest of it. I just wondered in the chat what people think about this sort of the cutting process, if they feel that it is something they would like to try out, because I would definitely encourage people to do that, because I think it's wonderful for speaking and listening. It's absolutely wonderful.
I just say one thing is that if you are lucky to be in a school where they teach music technology, the children will know how to do this sort of thing. So, for example, in our school we teach Cubase. And what I like about that was that looked much easier than Cubase. So you may well find that the students can do it.
And one of the things that's 100% true. One of the things that I found, and I was gonna kind of use this as a concluding remark, but it's equally valid now. This is a way not only to bridge gaps, right, to make connections, but also to really activate some skills that kids have. For instance, your music students could create an original audio that is the kind of theme for the class podcast. Bang. Or I've had students who are more gifted in the two-dimensional, right, so graphic design, create a theme that we can use across our class podcast. Or create, well, I'll talk very quickly about video at the end here, create sort of overlays or create some class level signage that we can use as an overlay for some video projects. So, and then these are some next level applications that I thought of, right? So a routine newscast, right? So in some periodical way, maybe not once a week, but occasionally, routine podcast, special features. If there's something happening in your school or your school community that's worth shining a light on, then you can do that with audio in the language that students study. Limited run stories. If you're familiar with StoryCorps through NPR in the US, which is preserving narratives that are not the narratives necessarily that were taught in high school or in college or at all. So a way to capture things that mean something to students. Messages for media. One of the first tasks that I took to was, because we knew we were going to be away for a little bit, we created for La Voz, which is our, I'll link out to that now, which is our Spanish language sort of blog at our school. I said, all right, I want to collect all of the, well, as many voices as I can. I want to collect voices from teachers saying, hey, we love you, we miss you, and we're going to be through this together. So I was able to take a audio that I created in Soundtrap, just as we described. My colleagues sent me audio. I uploaded that to SoundCloud, and then this becomes a...
Hola a todos, soy señor Connolly. Mis colegas y yo queremos compartir unas palabras en español para decirles que los extrañamos, que estamos pensando en ustedes y que deseamos que estén.
So on and so forth. But that's a way to, this could be a way to create a community, school-wide community outlet, audio outlet in the language of study.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm loving it. It's absolutely fantastic. I just had a thought about questions. Just I had hang on. Oh yeah, right. To do with pricing. That's right. To do with pricing. So you mentioned that you started off by using the free version, and then you went for the premium version. With the free version, what limitations are there? Can you do everything that you've shown us basically for free, or is there like a limit with the amount of times? I know there's like Soundtrap for Education, or,
Yep.
is that what is Soundtrap for Education? Is that a paid for version of it, or can you use it just Soundtrap straight out the blocks, as it were?
You can use both. In fact, I started using it before they went to the EDU model, and I think I'm still on a legacy version. But you'd need to look at their website, right, soundtrap.com for pricing. But I found that the two items that kind of make a difference, not that you can, in terms of the editing, in terms of even the collaboration, you can do all of that. It's the access to next level, right, archive of clips, and they measure it in projects. I think you can only have X amount of projects happening at once. So if I exited the studio and I went to my dashboard, I have things from the spring, from before that are here as part of my project. So I have 29 currently. I wouldn't be able to keep those. Now, I should say that, not that you can circumvent anything, but if you do all the editing, if you download the file when it's ready to go and you don't want to go back and save this, you can clean the decks.
Yeah. So is your plan to have students creating podcasts collaboratively together? Because you sort of talked about the country collaboration, but is that essentially them sending you the audio and you doing all the editing? So you could presumably do that in Audacity if you wanted to, or GarageBand. But is your ultimate aim to get the students to collaborate together on the same project?
Like I said, this is actually the first step to seeing if that's viable. Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity. I don't know what that's going to, they would have to have an account. And I think all of us are conscious of how many different things are we doing and how many different accounts are we asking students to maintain, even if they're free, right? Yeah. Whereas if we keep things in the core LMS, G Suite realm, we won't need that. Now, that's me saying it because I know enough to be dangerous in this area, and I'm comfortable taking on these duties. But I think if teachers wanted to distribute those duties to students, or said, I'm interested in doing this, but I'm horrified at the fact of my screen looking like my screen looks right now, you could explore some of the collaborative features.
Fantastic. No, that's great. I think that's really, really interesting. Just to know about your workflow and how you're putting this together. And
right.
Yeah.
And
wonderful.
That's what I kind of flashed this before. This would be some option in each area is the right one. So you're working with some microphone, whether that's your phone or your headset or your earbuds or something external, you're putting that somewhere, right? So you're moving it into your LMS, you're moving it into Classroom, you're moving it to Drive, perhaps going directly to Soundtrap. But you could, as I do, kind of take this route. And then once that file is done, you can bring that back into Drive and share it and say, hey, right, here's a shared folder of all of your podcasts, of all of your interviews, of all of your dramatic readings. It could, in interesting ways that bring this presentation together, it could become an audio that's embedded in a slide. And now we use slides to publish the podcast episodes, or as I demonstrated, it can go outside to SoundCloud or somewhere if you were interested in sharing this more broadly with parents, for instance, or with colleagues.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really sensible workflow. So essentially all the students are doing is they're doing their scripts using Google Docs, or you could use Microsoft Word or what have you, recording the audio using whatever tool they want to use. I presume you make some recommendations on if they wanted to use an iOS or an Android app, or they wanted to use a web browser. They put it all up into a central space, in your case, Google Drive, and then you then pull it all into Soundtrap, although you could use Audacity, etc., and then edit it all together with the music.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So when I started this many years ago, this idea of student voices and bringing them together, I was using Audacity, and Audacity was it's a free tool. It requires a download. It's bomb-proof in my experience. The one, compared to Soundtrap, the one real catch is that there's no, or at least there didn't used to be, any baked in audio tools. So when you talk about loops, when you talk about backtracks, when you talk about, which is the strength of Soundtrap, you would need to bring those in from somewhere else if you're going to use Audacity.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Wow, amazing. Were you going to show some ideas around video? Or
so this is just a teaser, maybe for number 100, or for certainly not 51. But you can imagine this same thing happening in video. I love a tool called WeVideo. It basically is a collaborative web-based video editing platform in the same way that Soundtrap is a collaborative web-based audio editing platform. And you'll recognize that it's the same idea, right? So you have a media library, you have a timeline. In this case, these are not audio tracks, but video tracks. And then you have a viewer here. So this was a time travel project that we did, and we sent students back to the 1950s with a 1950s style TV and black and white. So there's some really neat things that you can do. Again, you could play with all kinds of overlays and all kinds of graphics, which I do here, but you'll recognize fundamentally the same structure. An intro, right? A video that's submitted, another video that's submitted, some transitions in there, and then in this case, these are just outtakes. But the same idea applies. And in fact, the same workload would apply. But here you're trafficking in larger files. And in this instance, this is something that we were doing quite a bit, but when we're in school together, the notion of recording and sharing and downloading and processing so many video files would be something I'd want to think through.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking for the audio with Soundtrap, do you create like a template? So you have, if you're doing like a podcast, so you've got like your introduction, all that ready,
yep.
And then you just drag and drop the children's audio into the right spaces, move them.
And in fact, they have, when you first go in, you will have seen this. One of the first questions that if you create a new task or a new track, is this original audio? Is this a podcast? And if you choose podcasts, you've got some preloaded content that is infinitely editable.
Right. Yeah, fantastic. I think we just need to have a play. I think I knew it'd be brilliant, but I'm just very excited. That's really great. So I think if everyone is happy to turn on their microphones and their webcams, we can give Mark a very well-deserved round of applause. And then I'm sure we've got some questions as well we want to put to Mark. But that was fabulous, really fabulous stuff, and just something completely different to what we've done already, which is just lovely to see. Let's give Mark a round of applause. That was great.
Really good. And while you're there and you've got your webcams, can I take a little picture of everybody? What did you call it? I can't say it, Joe. A web fee.
Zoom fee.
A Zoom fee, apparently.
Well, I just made it up. I don't know anyone else, but I just, Zoom fee.
I don't know why I said I couldn't say it. It's very easy to say. Zoom fee. Lovely to see faces. And there's Tim up there emerging. You look as if you're emerging from I don't know where you are.
You're
can't
muted,
hear you at the moment,
you're muted.
But it's as if it's just the head. There you go. So I just wait to give people a chance to put on their webcams, and then I'll assume that people... Oh, and Danielle, where are you? Gosh, where are you, Danielle? Tell us.
It looks like Brittany.
Yeah.
Indeed, yes.
Very good.
There we are, lovely.
Coast.
And I know... Lovely. And I know where Sabine is because I asked her last time, and I've looked on the map and I want to go there when we're allowed back to France, where there are lots of lakes. Okay, so there's Colette. I'm seeing, is there anybody else who's on their way? Otherwise, I'll just take a picture of who's here. Okay, right, here goes. So I'll do a couple. 1, 2, 3. There we are. That's one lot. Great. And another one. 1, 2, 3. Lovely. Thank you very much for humouring me, everybody.
No, it's fine. It's lovely.
On the web page, though, when
That was great.
With the web page, and we say, here's the recording, here's the chat, and then here's the class photo. So thank you so much. I mean, Joe said thank you very much to Mark. And can I say on behalf of everybody as well, thank you to Joe, as always, for having these wonderful contacts, these wonderful friends who then become our friends. So Mark, it's been lovely to have you here. And Joe really has, we can see the way that he has thought through this series of webinars. I mean, particularly because it's the 50th, let's have a little tiny mini speech to say in praise of Joe, because really from the outset, he's thought through about, right, let's start with platforms. Now let's go to tools.
Thank you.
You know, he's, you know, from his contacts, he's found all of these experts in different fields. And it's lovely to have this because we haven't had one on this, have we? And you've got just as much enthusiasm here as ever. And lots of interesting comments there. We love what you weren't watching the chat, Joe, when you were doing your little duo bit there. You'll find that amusing because we were all enjoying that. But really lovely ideas, and some of the comments people have been saying about audio and the value of audio, that some people don't want to have their face shown.
Yeah.
And you know, so it's great. And just a little comment that I made is that we have a lot of tends to be techie boys, but we've also got techie girls who would love to be the people putting this together as well. So thank you ever so much to both of you. Really, really lovely evening.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Mean, yeah, as Mark knows, I'm a big fan of audio, have been for ages. And I think clarifying the workflow was really, really interesting, because I think it could easily fall down if you're asking the students to do too much editing and things like that. But the idea of getting them to write a script, getting them to record it, and then just the topping and tailing that you can do within the online voice recorder in the browser is really nice. And then the teacher then pulling it all together. And obviously you could get the students to do that as well if they were particularly skilled at doing that, or maybe you could do some sort of in a sort of a face-to-face environment, you could have some sort of like podcasting club, so the enthusiasts do that. But to get everyone to like record and edit, I think might be a bit more problematic. If it's okay, if I was just going to share my screen with everyone. This is very geeky. I'm going to admit now.
So this is the geeky session now.
This is the geeky bit, right? So I'm going to share my screen. Here we are, right? So I'll click share, and I'll just click present. Right. Can anyone guess what? I've got 3 slides. So slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. Can anyone guess why I was trying to put these images together, or what these are officially are called? Any ideas at all?
I know.
Mark knows.
Well, is this a technical term we're looking for?
Well,
No.
Well, okay, yeah. Go on, Mark. Do you want to?
Well, they're saying it in the chat that these are DIY recording studios with some soundproofing and some.
If you see something, pictures like this, what would you think the man is doing? Something to do with music.
Exactly. So essentially, one of the issues that I found recently is when I ask people to send me audio, sometimes they record in rooms which, for example, have laminate floorings or tiles, or they don't have a lot of things on the walls or what have you. So in other words, you get a lot of echo, you get a lot of reverb. So by designing these sorts of like blanket forts, or in fact, it sounds quite amusing in a way. On Twitter, if you do a search for something like podcast hotel or recording in a hotel, you get all these different DIY images. So I was trying to work out a way of reducing the reverb. So by for example, on the one that's top left that you're seeing right now, that's one of those, like what do they call, the table that you put your suitcase on in a hotel. Someone's put that on top of a bed, put the duvet over the top, and then the suggestion is you then record underneath that. It could get a bit hot. I mean, you could be really geeky and put a duvet over your head as well, but it's going to get very hot if you're going to record for, say, 30 minutes. But the sound should sound really brilliant. So in other words, what you're doing is you're reducing all those hard surfaces where the sound is reverberating off. And by doing that, you should get a much smoother studio quality sound for nothing at all. Just some pillows, or you can make like a pillow tower. So if you have like a V, you make a V shape, you put another one on the top, and then you put the mobile phone. I know these are nice microphones, but if you only were recording on a mobile phone, you then put that within that tower fort, or the triangle, and again that reduces the reflections. It should make the audio sound better. So it's just like a few DIY tips on if you wanted to.
Is it okay if I add something here?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Kind
of
of.
course.
So yes and yes, and we've all. I've certainly tried to goof around with different setups like that. The one. Well, two things. I guess where I started is the amount of post production is really up to you. Your ability to take that on, your willingness to take that on. But a recording from a student to the class, right, or the class to the teacher, is really what it's about, and that can be a singular submission, and that can be however low or high quality within reason. The other thing that I'm conscious of, again, I mentioned meeting students and using the time that we have available in our school. It's really only going to be 2 45-minute periods, but for students who learn through their ear, right? So to have a narration, so you could record yourself reading a short story or reading a drama or reading poetry, right? So to become sort of a read along. So that's another modality. We focused primarily on the student and student to teacher idea, but all of these tools and all of these workflows that I've described work equally well if you want to package your voice in different ways, spontaneous or prepared, for your students, if time is of the essence.
Yeah, great idea. Great idea. Oof, cool. Right. Any questions? I think we didn't have lots of questions tonight, so I think we've answered any questions that we did have. But any other? I'll stop sharing my screen now. But there we are. So for the benefit of the recording, this is what I did in the first week of my my time away in the evenings. I looked at lots of pictures of how to reduce reverb in podcasting. There we are. Anyway, I'll stop sharing my screen now. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have any other questions, I think we'll probably wrap up here. Yeah, Helen.
That I had was just that I'm about, and I think I will pay for it. I'm about to upgrade my Camtasia, which is obviously going to cost loads of money. And then when I looked at that, I thought, well, should I put my money that way? But I can see that probably the Camtasia's got a lot more, hasn't it, than on that one, on the Soundtrap.
Yeah, I mean, Camtasia, for those people that don't know Camtasia, you're talking sort of £250, because I had to look at it when I updated when I bought a new computer, because I was able to, fortunately, even though the version that I had was 10 years old, there's an update option, which is only £100, whereas if you buy it from scratch, it's £250, which is quite an investment. But I think, as I was saying earlier when Mark was talking, if you're getting into this for the first time, one of the most important things I think is getting a good quality microphone, because you can use the inbuilt microphone on the laptop. You can just use like a headset microphone, but if you just spend like £70, which I know is a lot of money, but it'll be absolutely worth it, because each time you record audio, if you have good quality audio, the children will really appreciate it. But yeah, if you're going to get into film editing, like with all these things, you get what you pay for, and Camtasia won't run the risk of it crashing because or not having enough based on the internet connection, it not being fast enough to cope, etc. So if you have dedicated software for doing video editing, etc., then I'm a big fan of Camtasia. I've got that as well. But for like classroom tasks and things like that, I think Soundtrap or good old Audacity. I mean, I'm a big fan of Audacity as well. There's so many things you can do with Audacity, but as Mark said, you don't get all those inbuilt sound clips. But Camtasia is fantastic. Camtasia is like the Rolls Royce of screencasting software, I think. Yeah,
but it doesn't have. I'm assuming, because I haven't upgraded yet. I will upgrade, but it doesn't have that idea that you had there of being able to share an app. I mean, that's what seemed to be so good about what you were demonstrating, that you were both on the same page, weren't you?
Yeah, you can't do that with Camtasia. No, not that I know of. But yeah, the nice thing about Soundtrap, the way that you can both collaborate on the same project, that's very nice, definitely.
There's a question there as well, and nice to see as people are going. It's lovely to see all these comments. There was a question about, actually a comment from Danielle Bourdet. Would you like to tell us, Danielle, about the advice that the BBC gave you for creating good quality?
Yeah, I mean, they just wanted me to take my phone, go into my toilet, cover myself up with a blanket, and powwow, be on television. I didndidn't actually, because I do have the fancy Duda, what is it called, microphone and stuff. That was coming from the top techie guy at BBC. So there you go.
There we are.
I mean, given what's happened in the world of reporting, public and private media, many of the reports that we've heard, even collaborative ones, as I've tried to describe here, were recorded in hotel closets or under blankets or.
Yeah.
Yeah, just talking on that, there's an amazing guy who works for the BBC who's got nothing to do with education or languages or what have you, but his name is Mark Settle. I've just put his name in the chat. And if you look through his timeline, he's really, really into mobile journalism. And he regularly tweets pictures of BBC reporters recording their shows from their hotel rooms or at home. And I found it personally fascinating hearing or seeing people on the screen speaking from their homes and how they're getting good quality audio. There was on the BBC News website, I think it was talking about there was a Radio 4 audio drama program that was completely recorded during lockdown. And again, you can follow the Twitter chat with, I can't remember the journalist now who's talking about it, but essentially they were using, there's a tool called Clean Feed. Again, I'll put this all in the chat. So it's called Clean Feed, CLEANFEED. There's also one called Zencastr, which works in a similar way, both of which are free. There is a premium version, but you can use the ones for free. So what you do is you create your account, it generates a link, and then you send that link to whoever it might be, and then you can then record audio, and it records the audio locally. So you're going to get better quality audio as opposed to the audio you would get by recording, say, a Skype call or a Zoom call. And so for this, I think it's called Bird on a Wire, if I remember correctly, Bird on a Wire, which is a BBC Radio 4 radio play. And it was all recorded with all the actors in their own homes with duvets over their heads and all the rest of it, which I just thought was lovely. And I'm not listened to the whole thing, but I've listened to little bits, and you wouldn't know. But the director was talking about the difficulty in getting the actors to do that. And one of the main issues he was saying was the internet connection speed. So if the internet connection speed is not fast enough, it's going to cause a problem, which is why it's a good idea to have a backup always using, say, a secondary device like a mobile phone to record locally. So you're never going to get any issues around dropout. And then the editor then has to put it all together. But I just thought, isn't it incredible how people can be ingenious in sort of crisis or difficult situations around the use of audio. So I just find it fascinating. There we are.
And there's a little bit of a marketing slant to this, right? As we're talking about audio plays or audio books or dramatic readings or podcasts, these are things, I'm sure they are in the UK as they are here, that are enormously popular, as not just in these current circumstances, but period, but to be able to leverage that for language learning and to harness some of that familiarity and some of that excitement for language learning is to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. I found that can help.
Yeah, no, definitely. Absolutely. Oh, I could go on and on and on. Any other points people would like to ask, or has anyone had a go at any of this sort of thing? Has anyone used, for example, Audacity or sound recording to promote listening and speaking skills in their language lessons? Any feedback people would like to give? I know we had an interesting chat about, can you insert audio into PowerPoint in relation to an image and this sort of thing? Has anyone had a play with those sorts of things at all?
Yeah.
Sabine, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I've used listening pyramids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So it wasn't my idea, but I've seen it on Twitter. So listening pyramids, where you've got obviously a pyramid with smaller going down, and we've used it for the photo card exam skills, and we've used it as a matchup, as a translation, as a story where they had to reorder the story. And I thought at the time, well, actually, I had never inserted audio before, and lockdown has forced me to insert audio into PowerPoint slides. And I would, like Mark said at the beginning, I will definitely continue to use it even when we're going back into the classroom setting.
Yeah,
and that's something never really spent, and it's very, very quick to just insert audio.
But a little tip, I don't know if this still it works, but I remember years ago, like literally, I don't know, 2006, I used to use a piece of software called CDEX, which I've just put in the chat. I can find the proper link in a minute, but basically its prime purpose is to rip audio from CDs, so you've got them as MP3 files, but it also had it has a secondary functionality, which is you can take the MP3 extension. So when it says .mp3, and officially it's called, I think it's called riffing the WAV header, if I remember correctly. So essentially what that means is, this is very geeky anyway, what it means is you can remove the .mp3 and replace it with WAV, but it doesn't make it into a WAV file, because if you don't know, a WAV file is about 10 times the size as an MP3 file. So it's much, much bigger to send via email, etc. But it converts it so it says it's .wav, but it's not really. It's lying. It's not a WAV file at all. It's actually an MP3 file, but it says .wav, and as a result of that, you can insert the audio into, or embed the audio as opposed to insert it. You can embed the audio into a PowerPoint, which means instead of having the PowerPoint slide, the PowerPoint file and the audio file in the same folder, which is what you have to do when you insert an MP3 file. You can't embed it, so it becomes as part of the standalone file. But if you do that with a WAV file, it does, but it makes the files much bigger. Whereas if you use this CDEX trick, as I said, I've not done this for years, but that's what I used to do back in the day. It worked like a treat. So in other words, you could make small PowerPoint slides, or not, make them too big because there was lots of audio added, but have the advantage of embedding the audio as opposed to having it separately. So if you then had to transfer it on a stick or what have you, you'd have to have all the files in the same folder, which was a real pain. So it might be worth checking that out. While we're talking, I'll just see if I can find the actual link. I don't know if the software is still around. It might not be available anymore, but I think I'm right in saying you still can't embed an MP3 file in PowerPoint. You have to embed a WAV file, but let me just see if I can find it.
But I think this, I have to confess that I haven't used this very much with children producing stuff, but you've certainly made me feel I'd like to do that. But I think there are a lot of teachers at the moment who have learned over the past few months how to record themselves, whether audio or with video. A lot of people have just been using it through video. So I think all of these little, I know we're talking about geeky and techie, but people are up for finding out about these things because they might not have used it before. And now people who haven't need to. So it's really worthwhile having these tips.
Cool. That's the link, cdx.mu. So I've not used it for years, but that's what it used to allow you to do. It says it's open source. Yeah. So you download it. You can download it and then you select the MP3 file, and then it allows you to then riff the WAV header, which basically just means change the .mp3 to .wav. And therefore, when you click insert audio in PowerPoint and choose the WAV, the WAV file, which is not really a WAV file, it's an MP3 file, it allows you to embed it within the PowerPoint. There we are.
Sharing stuff you're suggesting here, Joe.
Oh, and obviously respect copyright. I'm only talking about audio files which you produced or your students have produced. I'm not talking about ripping CDs or anything like that and then embedding those into PowerPoint. Definitely not.
So Microsoft's riff.
Well, so CDEX, it allows you to riff the WAV header, which is the official term. So riff is the verb meaning to remove in this context. And then the header is basically, it thinks it's .mp3, but it thinks it's WAV, but it's actually .mp3. But there we are. I wrote notes about this years ago, but I need to check out whether you can still do this on the full version. Anyway, we are still recording, so it's probably time for us to wrap up, unless anyone else has any burning questions or reflections on how they're recording their audio on their phones or microphones.
Helen did have a question, but she's not here at the moment.
Okay.
It was, where do I find a good banner as a background for recording if students want to present their French TV broadcast?
Oh, right. So as in a green screen? Is that what she means?
Yeah, she's just put a banner. I suppose it's, how do you get the background?
Okay, so there's various ways of doing that, of getting royalty-free images. So one nice way is to go onto Google Advanced Image Search and go down to the bottom where it talks about proprietary rights and just choose one which says non-commercial, can edit, or something around that. There's also websites like Unsplash. I'll put some of these in the chat. Unsplash, or there's one called Pexels. There's one called, let's have a think. Let me think. Pixabay, but I would recommend. And sorry, Photos for Class is my favorite one, photosforclass.com. But I would always recommend that the teacher finds the images and then shares possibilities with the students, rather than the students just going onto these websites and finding the images for obvious reasons.
Okay. So shall I stop the recording now?
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Mark. That was awesome. Really awesome.
Thank you.
Recording. Where's the recording? Stop recording.